Good evening. I'd like to call the Development Services Committee meeting to order. It is now 6:00 p.m. The first item on our agenda tonight is a review and approval of our February 19th, 2020 committee meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look them over? Are there any questions?
I'd move adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is discussion about public-private partnership, and I will turn it over to Mayor Boudreau, who will introduce our guest.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Way back at the last meeting, the last meeting on February 19, we had talked a lot about different things and capital projects and moving forward. And one of the items was that we would invite someone who has expertise in public-private partnerships to just come, talk with council, brief overviews of what that is. Bob Stowe, I'm sure he'll be able to talk about himself and his experience, but he was former city manager in Bothell and worked through a significant redevelopment. He was also part of our Collins-Warman team in 2017. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and turn it over to Bob and welcome him to our council committee.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor, and good evening, council members. Very nice to be with you here again. Again, I'm the owner and principal of an economic development firm that specializes in public-private partnerships, or what we'll call now as P3 strategies. And as the mayor had indicated, my earlier career of 30 years was spent doing the same government and leadership work that you all do now as the city administrator and city managers for 4 different cities in this state. And again, I was on the Collins-Warman team that prepared your downtown development strategy in late 2017. I do have a brief presentation, about 7 minutes, maybe 7-8 minutes, that I've been asked to provide about P3s and how they may relate to Mount Vernon's Library Commons project, as well as any future development opportunities within the city. And at the end of the presentation, I hope we can have a group discussion about the Library Commons project and P3s. But if you have a question before that, please do stop me as I'm here just to provide some information, assistance, and guidance to you. I also know that you've spent some time on some past presentations of P3s provided by your city attorney. So I'll try not to cover that same ground, but provide you with what I hope is some useful information. And so there's a lot of text here on the screen about describing a P3, as the definition really is varied widely, especially in this state when P3 is not really embedded in the state legislation like other states. We have limitations largely from the state requirements prohibiting the gift or lending of public funds. And so a simple definition that I use in the context of describing a P3 is that they are creative alliances between a government entity and a private developer or developers to achieve a common purpose. P3s oftentimes allow for a government body to enable a desired development that organically would not have been possible otherwise. And I see P3s in cities as a means to support mixed-use developments, transit-oriented developments, public facilities, such as what we're going to be talking about tonight, recreational facilities, downtown revitalization, affordable housing, and industrial commercial development. Next slide, please. I also see P3s, there you go. I also see P3s in the development of public infrastructure and facilities, especially when a public asset that may no longer be needed to serve its original purpose is used to leverage or serve as a catalyst development site, resulting from the sale or lease of that site for the desired development. An important element of all P3s is that they start and really end also with a shared vision, just like any land use and development process. If the partners or the alliance don't share a common vision, then that project, at least in my opinion, is more likely to fail due to the complexity, the commitment, and the resources and the time needed to really put these projects together. Next slide. I won't go through all these points and the common principles in the interest of time, but we'll pick just a few. P3s are far more extensive and expensive upfront and time-consuming than either the private sector or many public officials would like or anticipate. And P3s in this state require a public purpose and really are the reasons for P3 project in the first place. Next slide. This is an example of a P3 project in context of a larger downtown revitalization in the city of Bothell. As the mayor had indicated, I was the city manager of that city. I recruited and negotiated a purchase and sale agreement, a development agreement, and a public benefits agreement with McMenamins for a hotel, a restaurant, entertainment complex that was designed to serve as a catalyst development in downtown Bothell. And some of the key points of that deal was that it preserved this historic building called the Anderson School, this iconic structure in downtown Bothell versus a perpetual easement. And this is key. It provided free use and access to a pool that McMenamins restored and offered. This was a pool that the city, due to budget constraints, closed. But the deal was that McMenamins would provide use and access of this pool for Bothell residents for the next 15 years free of charge. Also provided free meeting room space for the city and the community, provided an easement that was necessary to accommodate an open creek channel that was required to run through the city, replacing an old storm pipe. And so the city purchased this property for $7.1 million and then sold that for about 25 cents on the dollar back to McMenamins, plus all the amenities. And so the difference, which is about $4.5 million, was supported by the free access and use of the pool. And we simply monetized that by looking at the number of patrons to the pool and then those visits multiplied by $5 per visit, calculated over a number of years in order to pay back that $4.5 million was the public-private partnership and benefit that existed. So the result was that community pool was provided along with the Catalyst development. The deal, I can tell you, wouldn't have happened or wouldn't have penciled for McMenamins without that partnership. And Bothell's development today would look significantly different than it does now. This was the only property that was sold for below market cash value in the city, as it was a catalyst development anticipated to really stimulate other downtown development. Its impact really energized the development and increased property value significantly, which in turn helped the city pay for its $150 million of infrastructure that it invested in its downtown. And every piece of property that was sold in Bothell during that time was viewed as an opportunity for a public-private partnership. And just to give you an idea of the time frame of just that one public-private partnership with McMenamins, it took 7 years from start to finish. Next slide. So these are some of the typical benefits or assets that a public sector can offer as part of a public-private partnership. Those include the vision, the political and the organizational support, land that you may be able to discount or provide at no cost in order to incentivize development. You have your regulatory toolkit that you can offer additional heights, some parking reductions, or maybe some shared parking provisions or free parking or even waiver and caps. You could construct some infrastructure that's necessary for the development. You can even contribute funds and with respect to grants, maybe some debt issuance or a public vote for a new revenue source. And then you have the ability also to share some operational capital costs with a private partner. And the typical benefits or assets that the private sector can offer as part of a P3 are really the needed capital for a development project. In Bothell, by the time I left in 2016, over $350 million of private sector capital had been raised and was put into the ground with the city's actions. Private sector can also provide the expertise and the efficiency associated with the vertical construction, resulting in potentially a lower cost. And then also the ability to share operational and capital costs with a public partner. I picked sort of a typical time frame associated with a public-private partnership, and I've just used the land sale as one example. And if you have available land that's not necessary for that original public purpose, then you may be able to surplus that, and identifying those sites could take 2 or 3 months. An RFQ, RFP development, along with identifying the city's incentives necessary for development could take another 2 or 3 months. Recruiting and soliciting the development proposals, another 2 months. Evaluation, interview, and selection, 2 more months. Negotiation of a memorandum of understanding or purchase and sale agreement, development agreement, up to another 6 months. Developer due diligence, 12 months, entitlements, another half a year, and then construction, 12 to 24 months. And that's a pretty aggressive schedule. And so that just from start to finish, a very aggressive schedule on a sort of a typical P3 land sale transaction development would be 5 years. Next slide, thank you. We advance one more slide.
It is. I think the electrons are just working a little slow this evening.
Okay, there we go. So this is the potential agenda that I created just to really tee up some discussion points. And before jumping into that discussion or inviting discussion, perhaps I can frame the discussion a little bit by saying, I know that you've been pursuing a library, community center, maybe some small retail spaces that could be a part of that, parking garage, all a part of your library commons project. Also understand that one of the delivery approaches that you're considering for the development of this project, in addition to the, rather than the typical sort of design bid build approach, is a progressive design build. And we often consider progressive design build approaches as a P3 type of development or P3 type of project. I also wanted to say that public investments in facilities that bring people to downtown, such as a library project or a community center, and those that support private business activity, such as a garage, can and have helped communities create energy and excitement that stimulates future development and serves as a catalyst for that desired development. It seems to me that the momentum of your library commons project, the need for parking, especially in light of the potential to surplus and sale some city-owned land that I'm aware of from our work in 2017 for private catalyst development in the future, which currently includes public parking for the downtown that will need to be replaced. And the time frame in which your lift ward expires all seemed to point in the direction of advancing the library commons project if you're able to at this time. Sorry for my phone ringing at the same time as a group meeting. So maybe we'll start with just launching into the agenda and having a discussion about P3s and how it might relate to your library commons project or other projects that you're considering for your downtown.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bob. I'm sure we will have some discussion. So there you go.
Well, I'll start with just the thoughts behind moving on the Mount Vernon Commons project in general, and then, would certainly love perspective, and I think maybe council will have some questions then. So in working toward the goal, not only having the downtown master plan and then the sub-area plan working in 2017, identifying the need for parking, we always felt that what the experts were telling us was that we needed that parking structure so that would incentivize and that would attract development, and that there would have to be a partnership with city infrastructure and parking in order to even have anyone seriously look at investing in the downtown area. So that's why we council elected the lift, and that funding is being collected now, and trying to work with the county on being able to move forward on the site we have been working on. However, in the past, there's been different proposals for different locations, and then I think council had some questions about that in conjunction with being able to develop the waterfront parcels, which you're probably familiar with, Bob. So
yes.
That's kind of where we're at, and the curiosity of, how it all could work together and how we could, chicken, egg, what comes first, all of that. So.
So who wants to start with questions? This is amazing. The quiet group. I was expecting more questions.
I got one.
Okay.
Bob, besides COVID, smoke, and an economic downturn, what were the two biggest things for the city of Bothell that were negative? And then what were two different things that were really positive and went real smooth? You've mentioned a few things in here, but directly when you were dealing with this for your city, what were a couple of different things that were really hard to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, challenging for Bothell at that time was that it was changing really kind of the makeup of its historic downtown. And so we spent a lot of time of working with the community to find out what it loved about Bothell, what it loved about its downtown, to make sure that our plan and all of our investments and the visions were embracing that. So that was a challenge. It's one that at the time I thought, spending 3 or 4 years on the planning process just seemed like a terribly long time. And why don't we just go out and start doing some work? But I'm really glad that we did, because redevelopments of that nature, especially one that large, takes a long time. Many times it takes time beyond what the initial elected official who came up with the idea or supported the idea, when he actually sees the fruits of his or her labor, is probably going to be another council member sitting in that spot. So it's really important to make sure that your community embraces the plan that you're moving forward with because of the time frame. The other was the challenge of, and it seemed insurmountable to many people in the community, is how are we ever going to raise $150 million of public infrastructure investment at the time that we identified the plan and we identified all the barriers that were existing to the plan. But we were simply focused and disciplined and made it a priority, and we found a way. 2/3 of the revenue came from other people's accounts, other people's money, OPM, and the rest was from dollars that the city found a way to support. And it made some calculated risks that we were going to be successful and get a return on the investment, not just in terms of revenue, but also in creating this special, memorable place that people wanted to create. So I think it's, again, just getting your community engaged and in line with what you're trying to do or want to do. And then secondly is being able to fund these kinds of major investments at the same time as you still have the requirement of providing, great municipal services to all your residents. You still have that day-to-day operations to do.
Thank you.
I think just a comment on the mayor's remarks. Maybe it is a chicken and the egg scenario, but at least when I look at what you've done so far with the Library Commons project, its momentum, the LIFT award, the need for parking, you have a project that's close to being teed up for you to move forward with. And then once you have that moving, I think you could start also working on other public-private partnership opportunities with respect to assets that you currently own that you could surplus and leverage for other development, specifically along the waterfront. I know we identified as part of the Collins-Warman report, trying to create that energy or that heat on some of those catalyst sites that brings more development.
So Bob, just curious on the 150 million, what kind of infrastructure did you guys have to tackle? And was it in tandem? Did you do your infrastructure first and then the private development came and all the great things?
Correctly or foolishly, we did it all at the same time. And so we had a lot going on. We were building infrastructure at the same time that the private development was happening, because in many cases our deals had the private sector building a piece of it. We were building a piece of it, or everyone had their roles. And so there was a lot going on at the same time. Plus we had, I think, almost $8 or $9 million of environmental cleanup to perform at that same time that we're doing all this development. So Cities that weren't used to, and Bothell was one of them, was really focused on the regulatory environment, like many cities are, wasn't really used to meeting those development schedules. And so we had to learn on the job as how to move quickly with developments. But 100,000 of that infrastructure was streets. 60 million of it was a highway project in which the city relocated a Highway 522, pushed it to further to the south. That created 3 new blocks of retail commercial opportunity. Although it's a state highway, the city took it on. And so then we had $40 million of other sort of associated street improvements, utility improvements. That open channel that I mentioned was part of that. And then 50 million or so was a public facility, a city hall. So the last sort of investment the city made was the City Hall project, which was always planned to be part of the $150 million package. But we wanted to show and make sure that we were successful in the private sector developments before the public sector came online with a new facility. And included with that, I should mention, was also a garage, an underground garage, not only that accommodated the city hall, but was also meant and overbuilt by 100 spaces in order to accommodate other mixed-use development on the same block with the city hall.
Well, I have more questions, but I didn't want to get in front of council members, so
Sure.
I'll give.
I'm curious to know, this is a lovely project in Bothell that's a little bit more than our, vision. I'm wondering if there's anything at a smaller scale that you could give us as a example of how this could work for us. It's hard to bring it into when you're talking 150 million, that's way out of our purview. I was just trying to bring it more into a scale for us.
Yeah, and that's a big scale, but I think kind of the principles of a public-private partnership, they're scalable. And it was 150 million or 100 million in street improvements because there's 25 acres of land that was being redeveloped, and so the sale was comparable to the size of private sector development that was being recruited at that time. But I think in Mount Vernon has a great opportunity in which you have a lot of public assets that potentially you maybe don't need if you had ability to replace the parking that is being utilized on those spaces now, that you could sell at a discounted rate or below market value rate in order to get that return on investment of a development. That longer term revenue projections that you're able to create, or being able to bring a catalyst type of development in that then stimulates other development. And then more so than the revenue picture, what I get excited about when communities are able to do that is the kind of sense of place that we're able to create, and the energy and the vibrancy that you inject in a downtown by doing so. But I've worked with communities that are only have 50,000 or 100,000 to spend, and you just work on the scale that you're able to do. And whatever you do, I always advocate that your first project sort of out of the gate, make sure it's successful, because when you have a failed project, that has reverberations that get sent out through the outside world, and other developers and community members, they pay attention to that. And at the same time, if you have a project that fails, you've lost all that kind of political capital that was necessary in order to create that project in the first place. So find projects that you think you can be successful at, and do them as big as you feel comfortable with, but also understand that there's a lot of times there's more than just the revenue generating capability that comes back. It's the kind of the quality of life that you're able to create for your community, at least from my point of view, the type of amenities that you're able to provide back to the community, which is very important.
Thank you.
So, Bob, I really appreciate the information you brought to us. I think it's got some great value. However, for me, I think there'll be a lot more questions down the road as the project becomes more finalized. At this point, we haven't got a piece of property secured yet. There's some negotiations going on there, but I think there's some questions that are still to be answered before we move on. And for me, once we get that picture a little clearer, I think you could provide us with some more valuable information, and I'd probably like to pick your brain at that time.
Sure, be glad to offer any guidance or help.
I'll jump in. You talked about some of the incentives with the P3 project you did at the school, particularly buying the land and then the public benefit agreement you got out of that. That's sort of the capital side of it. How big of a lift is it to get from here to the agreements? You had a good timeline there that outlined, minimum of a year to develop that. What are the operating costs or pre-development costs? Maybe is a better term. I know without a project you can't say, but
yeah,
what's the scale we're talking about?
I mean, there's a lot of effort that goes into those negotiations and in courting a developer or soliciting a developer and then working with them through the process. And, so I didn't take an accounting of all the hours that were spent. I mean, the McMenamins deal alone, I think, although there was just one purchase and sale agreement and development agreement, I think I also issued 22 amendments to that agreement in order to accommodate not only their financing structure, but environmental issues that popped up along the way. So there's never a project that goes exactly as planned when you start out, but you just have to be committed to seeing it through. So the city didn't have any real pre-development expenses in terms of any of the private sector redevelopment. It did have pre-development expenses in doing a city hall development, and that by the method of we chose to finance that was through a IRS ruling 6320, which allowed the city to bring in a nonprofit and then have a leaseback situation. And then we did a progressive design build on that facility. But that was only the project that we had any pre-development expenses. Everything else was just, negotiation, a lot of due diligence sort of activities, making sure what the conditions for development were in terms of cleaning up sites that were dirty because of gas stations, because of old dry cleaners. And so all the things that the city is really best positioned to do, because at least at that time, the type of development that Bothell was looking for, the market wasn't going to support. It wasn't able to support a 501 or 502 type development. It was barely able to support kind of a garden style type housing. Certainly single family, but nothing more than that. And so we had to create a marketplace for that to occur. And to do that, it means you have to start chipping away at some of the expenses that normally would be performed by the development community until you're able to build that marketplace.
Thanks. Mark sort of alluded to the Library Commons project, and we have a concept for public infrastructure, public development.
Yeah.
There, we would have to incorporate some private aspects there if we wanted to talk about a P3, but the whole Collins-Werman report talked about lots of other sites. And so some of those assets we have are like the lands along the riverfront, and we do have land and it has a value in and of itself. But one of my questions is how sweet of a deal do these have to be, and or what's enough to entice someone to come in and bring OPM into and develop something that we set as a common vision. So is land in and of itself adequate, or do we have to bring resources in for part of the parking garage and then get the public benefits out of that parking garage for a certain amount of time? Do you see viable options down there on the riverfront as it is?
I think if you're able to, I'm not sure what your current rents are in Mount Vernon today, but at the time that we're doing our research in 2017, they weren't high enough to support the type of development that was envisioned. And so it doesn't matter where you build in Bothell or you build in Mount Vernon, the cost is going to be the same. The difference is what can a developer achieve in rents for residential or rents for retail and office space if you're fortunate enough to get an office in today's environment. And so it's really trying to understand the marketplace, and then chipping away at those expenses that a developer normally has. And some of the expenses land. The expense the developer endures is time. And so having an efficient, reliable entitlement process is important. Making sure that the infrastructure is there to support the development, and parking is significant. I mean, I think at the time we were forecasting parking, above ground parking at $30,000 in your report, but I'm working on projects that we're working on now that above ground is $40,000 just in the hard cost. And so we were probably $46,000 to $47,000 per space, hard and soft costs for parking. So to the extent that you have an asset that you can build as part of your library commons project, and if it's not being used and can be accessed by private development, that's significant. So you ask a question whether or not it's enough. I don't know if it's enough. If you're able to provide parking downtown, if you're able to provide a below market land value to help incentivize that first development, that early entrance into your city. If it is enough, I mean, I think that'll create enough energy, but at some point in time, if you're selling your next P3 project, you're probably able to get market value. I mean, just for an example, the last piece of property that I sold for the city of square foot, McMinimans, I told you we had to sell for about 25 cents on the dollar, but the last piece of property sold for close to $75 a square foot. And so pretty significant uptick in terms of the value creation that we were able to create in Bothell. And I think that's the impact that sometimes catalyst developments have. So it's just a matter of starting in your library project, given the fact that it's got momentum, it's got some lift financing, and maybe that enables that with that parking enables some other future lot to be sold that the city holds today for another desired type of development that organically could not have happened without your intervention.
How many of these P3s did you end up going through versus just market forces on development?
Every piece of property that we sold in Bothell anyway was a P3. At least we viewed it as a P3 because we may not have discounted the land, but we were achieving other benefits that we could only have created by the type of agreements that we were forming.
So that's many.
Oh, you're talking about a number? I think there's probably 7 or 8 different developments and also development agreements and purchase and sale agreements among, I think, 3 or 4 developers that were investing in developing in Bothell. And then there's other examples and there are other locations, but that's what occurred there.
Thanks.
You bet.
I got a question. Thanks, Bob, for doing this. I'm just kind of sitting here taking it all in. What I'm thinking about is that, if we want people to invest in our community, we as a community need to invest to attract that. And so going through my mind as I'm looking at this funding piece, and we're most likely going to have to do phases. So how do you get people excited about a parking garage, knowing that a library is coming or something else is coming? How do you kind of get that excitement?
Right. Parking garages in themselves are not terribly exciting elements. They're not something you create as part of your vision statement is to create a parking garage. But what does that parking garage enable you to create? Does it enable you to create a development along the waterfront or somewhere else in downtown that would not have been possible because of the economics just aren't there to support the type of development that you want, along with the developer paying for all the construction costs associated with providing parking, making the infrastructure investments, and then putting the capital in to actually produce the development. So, I would start in every community I've worked in. It's always started with what's the end outcome, what's the vision that we want to create, and then think about how do you get there. What are the strategic actions that you can take that will start to chip away and build on that vision that you're desirous of. And if it's a parking garage, because you can see a route to some other development that then is connected to another development, and you're able then to string some successes together, you create some excitement, and then I think you get people. That's where you get people on board. I hate to talk about the Bothell project so much, but just as an example, there are a lot of people in Bothell, even probably midway through the revitalization, didn't have an opinion or weren't on board yet. And it wasn't until McMenamins sort of came on board that they said, okay, now I'm on board. Now I see what they're trying to do. Now I can see this happening. And so sometimes it just takes that one project so that people can see and visualize the type of environment that you're trying to create. Excuse me. Did that help?
It did, absolutely. Okay. I just, for the folks that are watching, from as far back as I can remember, and I was born and raised here, downtown Mount Vernon has always needed a parking garage, and so I really think that it's time, to bring that, because of what that symbolizes, the ripple effect of that.
Right. What does it enable? What's an amenity that's not in downtown Mount Vernon today that can be created and supported by that parking garage? I would normally not think of parking garages of quality of life, but if it enables a quality of life amenity, more shopping, more park space, more recreation, more just community gathering spaces, then by all means, they should be part of the toolbox.
So on that line, one of the kind of questions I mulled over a lot is whether or not we take our resources and invest in just a public development project in and of itself, create that extra parking capacity on the side of downtown, and hope that there's the next phase, as you said, sort of string them together, and how much certainty do we have on that, as opposed to this concept of maybe using those funds for parking to further incentivize with some of the other lands we have on the waterfront, to actually build the private economic drivers that's going to help with downtown. I mean, I think there's a pretty good recognition that additional businesses, additional housing, downtown's going to bring more people, and then that's going to have a cascading effect. And you can't do that without parking, but we don't have a lot of incentives for the waterfront except the land itself. So that's one of the things I've really racked my head around, trying to figure out what is the route that's going to provide you that higher certainty of success for the downtown.
Yeah, it's probably, maybe look at it also, it's probably not the library in and of itself. If nothing else happens, it's not likely going to achieve the vision that you have for downtown. Similarly, a one-off development along the waterfront is probably not going to achieve your expectations. So it's which one goes first, I don't know. I don't know if I can't answer that for you, but it's more likely that's going to take a string of those kinds of developments in order to achieve your vision. And the library, at least for me, because you've done work on it now, it seems to be further along maybe than other private sector development, and you have some LIFT financing that at some point in time, at least my familiarity with LIFT, Bothell was a LIFT recipient when it did its $60 million project that I spoke of. Those funds are going to expire at some point. I mean, you'll need to utilize them. So all that combined may lead you to the conclusion that, take the project that's near ready now, but closely follow it behind with another potential development that you believe you can be successful with.
So that's really informative just to hear that, thinking not sort of one or two of these, but how do you, even though you do one or two at a time, it's a string, and it's critical mass or critical momentum or something that you have to build.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, developments large scale that I've worked on, it's never just one development. It's a string of those developments that make the project really viable and take off.
And if I can just chime in just for one moment here, is just on the, if you want to consider it, maybe the initial project for downtown is what's happened with Visconsi. I mean, that's been almost 2 years plus that we've been working with them. And if you've gone by, all the utilities are already in. The public benefit agreement that took close to a year. And I'd say even 6 months prior to that, with attorneys that were involved, not only the city attorney, but other attorneys with that. We've got work on 2 other businesses that are going to be going in there, and we just completed a pre-application with a company that is from working with Skagit Hospital, with bringing a 3-story medical facility down there. So if you want to look at something that's possibly revitalizing downtown, although it's not on the waterfront, it is at the gateway to the city as we're working our way down Kincaid. So just to, I think Councilmember Brocksmith and Beaton, I know you're aware of that, but things are really gaining momentum in those 2 particular areas. 7-Eleven is breaking ground, and we're thinking that the other 2 businesses going in there will be breaking ground later this year. We're going through some design standard work with them, with their consultants, but things are moving along at a pretty decent pace.
Great.
Maybe that speaks, Bob, or Mary, to even some of that scalability. You know, that particular development Chris just spoke of, it's 5 acres versus 25 acres, and so maybe that helps kind of frame the scalability, or even the stringing along of a couple of those size projects, which if you think about it, and kind of geographically stringing along at the same time along Kincaid Street, but that investment would then yield more attention and more interest in the city. And pretty soon, the waterfront property rents are higher and it starts lifting the boat, I guess. I don't know. That's a good analogy.
One last thing is the property to the south of the development over there with Visconsi. Cicada found some information in their insurance agreement or policy that they have in order to utilize insurance funding to remediate the soil there. So I know that is still a process that's ongoing, and we know we have 4 quarters after they remediate the soil until they would be able to sell that or redevelop that. But that's in work. I was talking with their attorney who happened to be working for the city on another project, and I kind of asked him to provide us an update there. So that's the latest on that particular piece of property.
That's great. You already have people investing in the community, and that's what it's going to take. Is you have to prove the marketplace to those outside of Mount Vernon, or those who want to invest in your city, that you're ready for business, and the market's there to support the type of business. And sometimes it takes the city's intervention to create that marketplace for them.
Bob, could you mention how, I know you mentioned you work with 4 to 5 developers, but when we're ready, whenever ready is, I have no clue. And we go out for RFP, RFQs. So I've been told that it's not, you just put it out and people, you've actually have to incentivize that. And you have to, almost pay that development for the time to kind of come in with ideas and all that. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case here, but can you speak to how you would run an RFQ, RFP?
Yeah, for a private sector development?
To solicit something like a P3, for waterfront parcels.
I've never had to pay for someone's sort of thoughts or interest to participate in the process. Although I suppose there are markets where development potential is very low, you may need to do that. Or if you're really wanting something unique, such as a public facility, you may have to pay for that. But I certainly wouldn't just issue an RFQ, RFP. I would use a 2-step process, probably cast a very wide net for an RFQ. I'm gonna make sure it hits the desk of local developers as well as national developers, and not make the bar so high that they don't feel like they're capable of responding without the added interest of knowing that they're going to be a finalist. And then from that larger list, pare that down to maybe 3 finalists that they have the ability and the confidence that they put a lot of energy into this. They know that they're going to get some return on that, return on that work, return on that investment. But before that even starts, I think you'd want to have a lot of discussion with developers and make sure that they're going to be excited and they're going to be interested, and you know they're going to respond to your RFQ and your RFP. I don't think there's nothing worse than issuing an RFQ and RFP and you have no one respond. And that immediately sends a signal out to, I think, the development community that, well, others didn't believe in them. Why should I believe in them when they go out the second time? And so I always, when I issue RFQs, RFPs, I make sure there's a lot of buzz around that development opportunity and make sure you have personal contacts with developers, courting them along to make sure that they're responding. They're coming to the open houses or the pre-submittal meetings that you may hold, and that you get a good collection of quality development proposals. And sometimes it's also just to make sure you have the right environment, making sure you've offered the right incentive package to get people on board, so they can see that there's a way to make a profit for them. And they have to make a profit. All developers do, but your profit is you want to fulfill your mission of your community. You want to fulfill that amenity mix. In some cases, you have a certain revenue stream that you want to bring forward in order to pay your operation expenses. But you both have interests and you both have to achieve them, and you just have to make sure that RFP package contains that.
Okay.
Any other questions for Bob? I guess not. Bob, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. We all do.
Oh, you're welcome. I really enjoyed my time with all of you tonight, but also, a couple of years ago. You have a great community. I had a good time touring it and learning all about Mount Vernon, meeting with the mayor and Chris and some of you during that time frame. And so, I'm optimistic that you can be successful. And I know you're going to do good work, and look forward to watching the success in Mount Vernon.
Thank you. You're welcome back anytime.
Okay,
Just
good.
FYI. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you all. I'll sign off now. I'm sure you have other meeting topics to.
Okay, Jill, was that inclusive of the Mount Vernon Commons discussion, or is that a separate item?
No, I was just going to do a really quick
Okay.
update on where we're at with that. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and go.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen really quick. There we go. Okay. So I'm not going to go through a ton of stuff other than at the very end, I'll kind of let you know where we're at with the county. But in kind of going back, like, when did we talk about this last? And it seems like forever ago, but it was actually at the last meeting with the minutes you guys approved tonight. So it was February 19. We had kind of a mini retreat, and I barely remembered that, but I did when I was trying to prepare for this. So, and then one thing I wanted to point out, that in your council drive, in the iDrive, under the MV Library Commons project, tried to reorganize that folder so it was chronological by year, so that you could refer to all of the different documents that we've done around this topic. And so you'll find, if you go in there, you'll notice that we did year and title. So it's just easier to find information to go back. And then also tried to reorganize the downtown master planning in the same way, so you can just see all of the different documents and the years of work on those particular topics. So wanted to make sure we showed that. Back in February, these are just a few screens where we touched on there is sort of where we had left off from 2019, and we had enacted the lift, and we were really in the middle of property negotiation at that time. So just kind of showing a few things in February. We talked about the location discussion and the different assessments. You'll find all these things in your packet. What other options there could be. If we were changing that, would we leave the library out and focus on the the parking? Would we remodel the library at that time? We just kind of talked about some of the questions that were out there, talked about that escalation, and Bob Stowe mentioned that, how they're looking at, even from 2017, the escalation of costs in building parking itself. We also proposed an idea to get to a $30 million valuation, and that would get us at least through phase one. What we believed our best guesses of what we could do for different revenues, and put numbers in there. So you'll find that in the packet in your council drive as well. Talked a little bit about a parking strategy at the time. In February, we were dealing with a lot of complaints from downtown, particularly around the beauty school and developments there. We were kind of going, oh my goodness, what could we do? Should we go back and look at an entire strategy for the downtown parking area? And talked about funding that study and starting that work this year before COVID, clearly. Talked about including a citizens advisory committee specifically, and then really finding that equitable funding for the garage debt. So we talked a little bit about that. So I just wanted to update from February to now. Clearly, so much has really kind of been put on hold and kind of suspended for not only dealing with COVID, but really just the energy around being able to have time and concentrate on this stuff. So I'm so glad that Bob Stowe was able to come and kind of really felt like, okay, let's pick back these conversations. So from February to now, I've met with County Commissioner Wiesen and different varying versions of county staff and him 8 different times. We have forwarded all of the phase 1 environmental documents to the county on their property of what we want to be working with. We've provided alternative parking options, including mapping for them. We did some pedestrian walking mapping and timing for them, looked at all of the options that the county had in some of their planning, not only from their 2016 facilities update, but currently. We looked at the current county Broadway property, which is that vacant piece of land right up against the railroad tracks at the very end of Broadway. How could that be reconfigured for parking? We had our engineering staff draw out and show that they could actually repave that and put 65 spaces there. We have agreed on moving forward with a purchase outright option. So that's what's being discussed right now. And attorneys are drafting that type of an option for language just at this point. So that's sort of where we're at with that. And I don't know if that's enough as a quick update. I think Melissa had asked for that. So if there's other questions I can help you with, let me know. Any other questions on where we're at?
So we're just still in negotiations with the county, or waiting to hear back from the county as far as their desires to sell that property?
Yes, and without maybe going into more of executive session type discussion, there is a consensus from the commissioner level that they are very interested and willing to do an outright sale purchase. So that was hopeful and a lot more movement than we've had in 8 meetings. So, any other questions? Like I said, I didn't want to spend a ton of time, but also point counsel to the information. And then what I felt my last direction was, figure that property out, and then we'll come back and start really talking super details and with people like Bob Stowe.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any more questions for Jill or for the mayor?
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, we're going to move on to you now for the downtown master plan review.
Sure. So this was one of the topics that Councilmember Holst requested prior to the COVID pandemic. And just to kind of give you an idea, I know you've had a chance to review the slides for this, but this is really taking a look from 2008 through present and any study that has been done. So the master plan, the parking studies, the HOBie study, which was an economic study for downtown, the sub-area plan and everything like that. I tried to put it in a manner that you have a stoplight chart that associates with that. So you can see things that were requested back in 2008. How applicable are they today? Again, integrating in the Library Commons project and just showing the flow over the last 12 years for that. So I will share my screen now and just provide a review of it. Oops. So pardon the delay on the slides here. Here is the downtown master plan. And again, I just plan on providing just an overview. So the first slide that you see before you here is just the general study area that was completed. You have the downtown core, you have the northern area, and then obviously the river off to the western side and I-5 off to your eastern side there. The goals and objectives that were part of the 2008 plan was, again, the flood wall certification, pedestrian-oriented downtown. There was some mixed land use, open space, shoreline, cultural, and institutional opportunities that were discussed at that time. And this is where Councilmember Brocksmith was briefly mentioning during the last conversation. You know, the revenue producing for land use, you know, retail, restaurant, hotel, increased residency and density in the downtown. Parking was discussed, as well as objectives dealing with vehicular circulation. I would also throw in there multimodal. We're not just looking at vehicles, we're also looking at pedestrian through that particular area. The preserving of the existing historic character of downtown. So with that, think about the downtown review board that we have associated with any of the part of the Kincaid sub-area plan, that is integrated into any type of tenant improvements or things that are happening downtown so that we keep that historic character. More open space and public amenities, the multimodal transportation, as well as sustainable design principles. The next diagram that you're going to see here deals with the urban concept or physical structure of what we were kind of dealing with and some of the areas that you look at downtown. Again, in your packet, this is much easier for you to read each one of the areas up here or as part of your guide for this particular chart or map as to what each one of these symbols mean along here. But I could just say some of the critical areas was working through Kincaid. You've got Main Street. You also have the intersection here on with First Street and 526. You've got a variety of notional areas that are located around here, but the big strategic look was going along the waterfront and the promenade that's been built there and flood wall for, again, that pedestrian and pedestrian flow. Here, next slide, we'll be discussing the urban framework. And for, as the mayor mentioned, this is all in your council drive that you can dig deep. But here we're taking you to the promised land as far as the pages that are associated with this. And again, just going over those areas, I'm not going to, reiterate or just read these slides to you, but there are a variety of things here that discuss pedestrian connectivity, the idea of really incentivizing the downtown to bring people in, the use of the multimodal, and then again the industrial sites. And I would take that as being the spot where Visconsi is now building that industrial site that's there, and then a variety of street trees and other urbanization that goes along with replacing what we have downtown. The master plan concepts, again, delineated a variety of different buildings that were associated with this, and a lot of these were transitioned over into the Collins-Warman study. So again, there's no surprises here. I think in the Collins-Warman, this would be 2, 3, and 5 areas that are located over here. We have the Carnation building just to the north. We have to the south near commercial cold storage, another parking area that was one of the Catalyst project areas that the Collins-Warman study had outlined as well. Some landmark structures, which is the next slide here. And I know there was about a 3 to 5 second delay as these were building, so I'll give you some color commentary waiting for them to build. But the Division Street Bridge, the old smokestack, the Granary building, the Lincoln Theater, the historic courthouse where Melissa is, and she could tell you all about the restoration efforts that are going on with that and the price tag that goes along with it. The old post office building, I would say even the old telecommunication building over there where we've had some interest with redevelopment. The water tower. So there's a variety of historic things that are located down there that are landmarks that we were looking at. We've even had interest in the President's Hotel with, trying to work with the Housing Authority and what we could do possibly with that to revitalize that particular area with some mixed use space that's there. So the ideas here on page 44 and 45, again, big bullet points, increasing density, intensity in this area and turnover, the mixture of land uses, which again, your downtown master plan does that, and the code to meet that. And this gets into the C2, A, B, and C varieties, more housing opportunities downtown, live workspace, again, with that particular redevelopment. We had a TI this week for a building that's right next to Christian Carlson's place that they're looking to bring in some well-needed business as well as live workspace. So that was really exciting. And then redeveloping of some underdeveloped properties. And we do have some infill properties that I'm not going to steal Rebecca's show at the end of this, but we do have some properties that are being looked at right now that she will be able to update you on. The next slide is the transportation and parking, and I will let you know through every study since 2008, this has come up, and I know we've had robust discussions on parking and transportation, and this basically is included throughout the whole entire downtown area to include Kincaid and even areas south of the downtown area. The streetscape, again, this is a one opportunity that if you ever take an opportunity to get up to Linden and see what they did with revitalizing part of their downtown, which was with a boutique hotel with an investor, was really what they did with their streetscape. Very nice concepts, very good opportunities where it came to walk, bike, and also had vehicular traffic that were all integrated in a very nice concept within the city center, and then plus or minus one block either side of that. And it was really just a really neat project that they've had that the directors have had an opportunity to go up to, and the mayor sponsored another group where we went up and met with their city administrator and mayor and kind of had an opportunity to walk through that. Inviting alleyways, again, we've been working with PSE and our varieties to make sure the alleys are very easy to navigate, not only for our public works vehicles, but also for vehicular traffic as well as bike traffic. So again, everything there being ped friendly. The open space and public amenities, I believe, again, the plaza, the promenade, everything that you had there, you can even throw in now because of COVID, we've really worked with, and at your direction, many of the restaurants to really make it more inviting during this time to have the restaurants when the weather is open and amicable for supporting outside activities that we're doing that. Farmers Market again back this year, the public restrooms and the revitalization of a variety of those, even going all the way up to Lions Park, which Bill King was part of, and a variety of public art, just like we talked about last week, and being able to get that as well as a museum. The infrastructure and utilities coming in here as we're talking about water, sewer, stormwater, electric, and fiber optics as the latest. All of those being integrated into our downtown plan. I can tell you for the Visconsi side of the house, this is something that was integral, working not only with PUD, but WSDOT, the city, and then our private vendor coming in. So again, not a small effort. I mean, it was a huge effort with lots of staff time and hours to make sure we were doing this right and not burdening either city or PUD or Visconsi as the current developer that's there. So all of those aspects coming in. And as the next slide brings here, I just wanted to provide you green work is stuff that has been completed. Yellow is projects that are in work, and white is just other strategies that are still in work. And from a standpoint, we haven't really done anything with them. So in this particular slide, you can see that the streamlined permitting process, that is the main effort that I'll be talking about during my discussion with SmartGov. So I won't steal anything there other than say the mayor hired me for making sure things were going to be the fastest and most efficient. I would say that we are well on our way to doing that. Collins-Warman P3 analysis, this got into the RFQ, RFP, which the mayor just briefly discussed with Bob. The business recruitment and retention, again, we've got a high amount of working with the Downtown Association, a variety of other tenant improvements that are happening downtown. We've got district brewing, we've got temperate brewing, we've got a few other restaurants that are in the work and other businesses that are coming downtown. And then again, a variety of special events through tourism. Implementation, again, comprehensive plan and zoning. All this work was done back in the 2018-19 timeframe. So all of those zoning and Mount Vernon Municipal Code have been updated to, again, incentivize this. The Shoreline Master Plan is being worked on this year. That is a state mandate that we have that done by the end of the year. And then the design standards. This is one where you've got the Downtown Association, you've got the Chamber of Commerce, we've got a variety of architects that are downtown that really have taken the time and effort to make sure anything new going downtown meets that historic downtown flair. And again, I think that's a success. Some regulatory changes, again, some of the comprehensive plan and zoning code, and we're bouncing back and forth between two different briefs, but again, these would have been in green as they relate to shoreline, comprehensive design guideline and signage. So again, our sign code's being updated again so that they complement the downtown. And then getting into some of the economic and feasibility pieces to it here. The implementation strategies. We talk about land use and mixed use density. This also was followed by the Hovey study that was done 2010-ish. We've got the intersection improvements that are an ongoing project, again, working very closely with our Public Works and WSDOT. Parks and the flood control, again, success story with Public Works dealing with that. Working very closely with PUD and our other utility partners in the city. I think, again, all of those, there are a variety of success stories. The comp plan, zoning, and master plan. And with that, Mayor, I will turn it back over to you for further discussion.
I think what we wanted to do was, weren't quite sure, since we've had a couple different briefings on the master plan, if that was detailed, too detailed, or if we wanted to keep going, because there is, you know, the Hovey study that has been done. We've had the Collins-Warman, and so just going to check in to see what council was really interested in, an overview of, or if that's what you were looking for.
Well, if I could ever get this thing to unmute, I'd be in good shape. No, I think this is a good overview of kind of where we're at and what we're doing, and you know, as we move forward, yeah, we can get more into the weeds on specifics. But I think this is a great overview of where the city's heading.
Okay, I'm hoping too that kind of reorganizing those the drive folder, it just makes it a little easier to refer to as well. Because it felt like they were all over and they were all titled differently and it was confusing. Okay.
Okay, so we'll go on forward now to the House Bill 1590 discussion.
Okay.
Jill?
And Chris, I think you can probably pull up the those for me, right?
Yes, ma'am, I am. I have to go through a few slides here because this is a PDF and not not a PowerPoint, but it's slowly but surely working for me. There we go.
Just kind of going back to House Bill 1590. So as council's aware, the legislature passed a whole bunch of different bills, and we've talked about House Bill 4. I'm going to get the numbers wrong. 1460, right? This is the shared sales tax revenue that's coming to us, and we're collecting that now, and that's going to go towards some housing vouchers, and then ultimately to the permanent support housing. Okay.
1406. You're almost there. Yeah.
14 and a 0 and a 6. So thank you. So this is another one of the bills that the legislature approved. And so just have a couple review slides, and I believe we put the actual bill in your packet too. So it is the ability for a councilmanic action to impose a 1/10 of 1% sales tax. So rather than go out to a vote of the people, similar to the transportation benefit district that we did, this would literally be a vote of our legislative body or city council to impose this sales tax. So it would increase the sales tax in the city of Mount Vernon. Nope, go back, Chris, not done. The first right of refusal was to Skagit, to the counties. And I confirmed with Skagit County with Kayla that they do not intend to take action before September 30th of this year to take that sales tax. So what that means is that after the September 30th, it's open to any municipality to take action if they so choose. So 1/10 of 1% sales tax collection is approximately $800,000. It's the same as our criminal justice collection, so it's fairly easy to estimate what the actual dollar amount would be if council decided to move forward on something like this. Okay, next slide, Chris, thanks. So this is for use for affordable housing. It's a minimum of 60% of that collection must go to what you'll see here in the bill for the construction of affordable housing, can be new units within an existing structure, and facilities providing housing related services, or, so you can see here, mental health or behavioral health related facilities, or funding, operation, and maintenance cost of new units, etc. So 60% of that collection would be about 480,000 would have to go directly to constructing, to actually doing units. That makes sense. Okay. Then, according to the bill, those units must be for the 6 different types of folks to be housed. So you can see that behavioral health, veterans, senior citizens, etc. And then next slide, the remainder, other than the 60%, could be used for operation, delivery, evaluation of the programs and services or housing related services. So what that, I believe the interpretation would be is that you could, if you took this collection, you could use it for construction, but then you could use it to hire people to actually run those programs and provide housing services. I didn't go and check that with anybody because I don't even know if council's interested in this at all. I just wanted to give you a quick briefing, but that would be our interpretation of that. So the last slide I had was that if council wanted to go down this pathway, I would really implore the council that we need people. This would be an entirely new program, a brand new service to the city. We've got to have folks that can run this type of program, can acquire those units, can manage those units, the maintenance and all of that, simply because we just don't have this expertise or this division or this type of work in the city currently. So it'd be very new for us. And like I said, I do believe that if council did this, that collection could pay for those employees to stand up the entirely new program. So that's all I've got on this, is just to put that out there to let you know that the county will not be enacting this countywide by September 30th. So any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just I just wanted to make sure I understood you correctly. On the 40% Could we use that towards the FTEs, or is that what you said, or did I misunderstand?
That's my belief, yes, that we could use that to pay for housing related services and people to run a program.
Okay, thanks.
I believe.
I'm curious, what changed? Last time we talked about this briefly, I think we were told that the county was likely proceeding. Just COVID or different change or elections or who knows?
I did not ask.
Okay, fair enough. But they did not imply that they were still considering this in the near future.
Correct.
And then you mentioned, you know, of course, takes staff to run these kinds of programs. And this model would be internalized, but there are partners who do these kinds of things that are also an option as well. It wouldn't require standing up new programs per se in the city government.
My thoughts are I would assume that, let's see, how do I say this the right way? I think the housing authority, that's what they do. Housing is housing authority. I'm not sure that there's a relationship enough there. I also don't know if there's capacity for them to take on an entirely new chunk of money in programming either. And Peter can talk a little bit about this when we get to some of the CARES funding, but it feels like the nonprofits have articulated that they are at capacity. This money is for the city of Mount Vernon, and so anything that would be constructed or rehabbed would be in the city of Mount Vernon. So certainly up to council to give it away to a third party. It's an option.
So to me, it looks like we're going to again put another tax burden on those that are really paying the taxes within the city, and then we're going to expand the size and scope of city government. It just doesn't seem like something I'd be interested in at all. It just seems like it would be more of a burden, not only to taxpayers but to staff and the city budget.
Is there a possibility that realistically, if we decided to do something like this, the county could come back and decide to do it too?
Yes.
So that could be a double hit on sales tax.
No, what they would do is they would, and if they chose to, they would enact it countywide, but they would have to, whatever we enacted, they have to give it to us. Okay. So it's not more like they carve it out and then they're left with the remaining. Yeah,
I got it. Thank you.
So if the county was to do this, is this more similar to kind of the jail sales tax where it's collected, we collect a portion? Of course, we have an agreement that turns that back over to them, but is it the same type of a principle?
Kind of, yeah. If, say, the county decided to do this before September 30th, and then we decided to do it later, we still would get our chunk. Versus, maybe it was the TBD where if county did it first, then we lose. This has been set up so that it can be enacted countywide, but then cities can also take their chunk of it that's specific to their city limits. I don't know, does that make sense?
I think I understand what you're saying.
And this is the same authority that Anacortes used?
I believe Anacortes did a voted as well.
Right, that's right.
So, and I think that was a different bill. There were so many that
it was voted. You're right. So it would be a different.
Yeah, Anacortes, it was a different bill. It was the sales tax bill that you did not take to the voters. Anacortes did, and it passed. So that's.
Okay. I'm certainly curious what other city council members think, but the scale of the housing problem we have is so significant. And really we've had a lot of discussion with our planning department in this planning committee about the programs, that we've set up so far, which have really been around bonuses for market-driven developments, where there's program housing set up for those who are making, say 80% of AMI, area median income. This kind of program would be for, those maybe even lower, probably 60% area median income or lower, and they're folks who are, essential workers who are taking care of a lot of city businesses and, you know, retail and food and other things like that. And so they've got to have a place to live as well. And I'm, particularly worried about that as time goes on. So it seems like if we're going to take care of everybody in the city, it's something that we should consider. What the trade-offs would be. I totally hear Mark's point about the tax burdens, and we live in a competitive sort of area where we have to not ratchet up our taxes, sales taxes higher than our neighboring communities, and we need to be thoughtful about what people have to spend. So we'd have to have a pretty darn good plan in place to know how many units and what the return would be. And I would really like to see us partnering with a nonprofit who has lower overheads, but I totally hear the mayor's concerns about capacity. And we'd have to have a dedicated partner like Catholic Community Services or somebody, who's willing to step up. So I'm interested in that discussion.
I'm okay having that discussion, Richard. I know that we're going to have a lot of good, it will be a good discussion. I think we'll have a lot of points brought forward.
I'll just chime in and say that I'm always interested in a good, thoughtful conversation. What I am concerned with is last week, I believe we were briefed on the needs of all three of our fire stations, and that's been hanging out there a while, and I heard talk about council manic bonds then. So it concerns me a little bit because I don't want to burden our families even further.
I'd also be interested in why the county is not doing this. I mean, since I don't know, that seems interesting to me. So I also would not really be in favor of, it's not that I'm not in favor of it, but just at the timing is not right to start moving down where you're going to put more taxes on people.
So next steps, I'm trying to figure this out in my mind. I'm not sure
when do we need to make a decision? Is there a time? What's the timeline for us?
There's no timeline.
Okay,
It's a law now, so it can be enacted. Yeah.
Okay. So could we possibly bring this up again at our next development services meeting, or I don't know, we're not going to be meeting in person for a while again. Apparently, I don't know what the latest date is. It seems like it's in next month at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what would you like us to do between now and then?
Okay. Well, you know what? I think a good point brought up about why didn't the county decide to do it. It would be kind of interesting to have a little bit of a discuss, or just, could the question be asked and then at least let us kind of know what their thinking is.
Okay.
I think at least that would be just a nice, even just a shout out to us, or maybe at our next council meeting, just kind of put that on as old business.
Okay.
For me, that would be helpful to know what their thought process is.
Okay.
Especially if we're doing partnerships with them on the, the supportive housing, it's like, well, wouldn't you think that they would kind of move in that direction a little bit? But also, Jill, were you saying that, wasn't there a date on there? I thought you said something about they had till the 20th.
Oh, well, so the counties have this first stab at it.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
And after that, then it's open to anybody. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything else they want to add to that discussion?
Well, just a quick thought. So if the county did proceed, they would be imposing the sales tax across all the jurisdictions, right? And so it's the same impact to our sales tax base, whether it's the county or the city. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. Just wanted to clarify that. But it just really does seem to make sense to ask a little bit further at the county what their longer term plan is. But they may not be able to say that because there's an election going on and things look like they're changing. So but as far as another discussion, if we know what a 0.01% rate would generate, then we could know what sort of bonding authority that would generate, and we would know then how many housing units one could develop with those funds.
Right. I'm reaching for it because I have that number. Sorry.
Yeah. There's some averages out there that give us some insight as to what the value to the community would be for the cost.
So just because I have a little thing right here, if it was an $800,000 collection, you could, depending on if you wanted to bond for the whole thing, but remember, you've got to pay for staff to do this work, right? So if you were to say pay for staff to do the work, you could probably bond for about $6 million. That would get you a debt service of around $440,000. If you want to bond for $10 million, it's about a $730,000 debt service. It's just ballpark ideas. So yes, you could definitely bond. However, that then takes away from the bond capacity of the city to bond for anything else like fire or anything else too. So it's really bringing in an entirely new capital program to what you're already doing too. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't use that and not bond, but use the revenue every year to pay for renting a unit or purchasing or whatever, right? So there's a lot of things you could do with the funding to realize units.
And then those units would have a rental rate on them, right? And that then goes to either additional bonding or development of housing units, or you could use that to pay for some of the services or operations of those facilities.
Yes.
So it's a one-time piece, but then you leverage those funds and turn around and keep building capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question to the council would be, when did it become the role of a local city government to start developing housing and get into the rental business of single or multi-family residents? I just don't see that as a role of the local city government.
I think it's really more just that their legislature is giving local governments the option to try to do it. It's not I'm not saying I disagree with you, Mark. I'm just saying they're giving us this choice is the way I look at it. And I really think we need to have a really good discussion about this because I am not really, we need to lay out our plan. We need to have a really good plan of what we want to do with all of the projects that we have in the works before we have any more discussion about taxing, a tax increase.
I do agree with Mary on that in particular. We've got some pretty high priorities that we're all think we're behind on and we'd like to get done soon. but the idea of what could be done after that would be good. So to Mark's point, I think that's why I asked the question of, well, would this be internal to the city, or is this a partnership with somebody else? You know, the state legislature recognizes that there's a very serious housing crisis that's affecting people who can't really dig out of it. And rather than, what's the right word, mandating from the state down and telling people how to do it, they're giving tools to local government. And so they're saying, you guys solve this problem. So the sooner we start putting in, you know, solutions into the system, the lower the pressure on our community and the lower the pressure for the state to act on us. And I know not many people on this council like the state telling us what to do. So that's kind of my, and I love this philosophical conversation that Mark's asking. It's the right conversation. I appreciate Mary saying we need to really, you know, dive into this.
I'll just finish by saying if it's such a great deal, then the state should put in the 1% or 0.1% sales tax, and they should put in a department that manages developing and being in the rental business, and they can do that statewide based on need. They shouldn't be pushing that off on local city government to do.
So Mary, what I heard was I'll reach out to the county and ask for an explanation. If it comes via email, just forward it, or we'll just talk about it next time. And for now, I'm going to set this aside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Chris, we'll move on to you with the SmartGov demo and permitting update.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate that. So what I wanted to go ahead and just talk about first, and I'll get to our website, is just what have we been doing since the last time we met? And I will keep it as brief as I can. I have a clock in front of me here, so I will give you an elevator speech. And it's a short elevator. Every single permit that the city of Mount Vernon has, and there's 90 plus of those, over 98% are on our portal now. So what Rebecca, Shauna, our permit tech, then again, you know, we've gone through the furloughs and all that sort of thing. We have seen an unprecedented amount of volume, but we wanted to make sure that while people were virtually going through this, that they had the tools to be able to make that happen. We've also integrated fire permits into this. So all the fire permits that used to have to go over to the fire department are now handled within this department, and we have protocols set up with the chief and our new fire marshal who's coming in to make sure all of that is streamlined and working fine. Today, I'll just give you an update on some personnel just real quick. Alan Danforth had a scooter accident on Ocean Beach, cracked his collarbone, dislocated a collarbone, broke 4 ribs, and dislocated 4 ribs. That happened over the Labor Day holiday and also his wife's 50th birthday, so quite the present. He was under the knife today at UW. I haven't gotten an update from him now, but when I do, I'll make sure I pass that on to you. One of the things that we are working on now is, as you would imagine, he's going to be out for a period of time as a professional services contract. I can keep it within the 2020 budget. It'll be less than $10,000. So it's not even a contract that would need to come to council for their review, but I just wanted to let you know from a standpoint of, hey, we've got a plan B to keep things going, working a majority of those things in-house, but Alan's going to be out probably for about 2 to 3 weeks. So that's one. 2, today was Nate Patterson's first day back as a permit tech. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for that. So good in-dock period for him over the next few weeks of getting him up to speed and working through that. The last thing I want to talk about is our work with Dude Solutions, who is the proprietor of SmartGov. 4 national publications on us and what our city is doing as far as the permitting. That's throughout the country and national publications. as well as probably a dozen cities that are, again, across the country. We've had one local one here in Medina. They've asked about how SmartGov and what they can do, as well as a variety of municipalities in Florida, Texas, the state of Kentucky, and a variety of other counties, and how we're going about doing business. So we have, again, partnered or they've reached out to us, and we've provided them our information on how we are doing business. And what I wanted to share with you now is just our portal. So Mary, if I could get a thumbs up from you when you can see that. Perfect. So on our portal, when you go to it, not only do you come up here and you can sign on and get a log on, that's great. And then you have the 4 areas right here that you can get and look at your own information that you would have or submit an application. By going here, you can check out everything that we have for code enforcement. So everything is linked between the website and the portal. If you go to the website, it takes you to the portal. It provides you all that information. On the public noticing piece, this is more on Rebecca's side of the house. Anything that you read in the paper is here. Anything, once it's been published from a permitting perspective, is put on here so that people can go here and research and look at things. And then the parcel search. We had one of these just happened this week where we were able to provide some education to the community, or a member that was there, that if you went here and you clicked on your own particular parcel, if there's documentation that we have there, it could be building plans, it could be a variety of permits, it could be anything that we have in our system right now, they can go in there and check that information out. So kind of a neat tool that's there. The last thing I want to share with you is just this section right here. This is the money that we sit there and what Rebecca and Shauna have done over the last year. And if you went to other municipalities, Island County, for instance, Oak Harbor, this would be blank. This up here gives you every single thing that you would need to know from an administrative standpoint of how to do business here in the city of Mount Vernon, as far as applications, worksheets, authorizations and acknowledgments. All of these are PDF fillable forms. Okay, so very easy for an applicant to download onto their desktop, fill everything in, do a save as, and then they upload the documents into SmartGov. All the master land use forms that you could think of, all located right in here. Pre-construction meetings, submittal meetings, requesting inspections. This gets you into how to do a virtual inspection, permits and approvals for administrative determinations to include ADUs, adult family housing, and on. All your building permits, all your conditional use permits, anything that was going through design review, linkages here to take you to those particular standards. Fence permits, here are your engineering permits for filling grades. All your fire permits are located here. Floodplain, I mean, I'm not going to go on and on, but let's just say that everything that you could think of as someone here, if you were to call or email, we could take you to the promised land in very short order and make that happen. And this is what Rebecca and Shauna have done over this past year. And again, I will let you know, Herculean effort. And from a standpoint of SmartGov or Dude Solutions, we are the poster child. So although, Mayor, we may not be the fastest all the time, but damn it, we give it our best, is that we are someone that they are partnering with and showing what is the capability of this particular use for permitting. So with that, that's really all I had for you for that initial update. Now I'm going to get you back into some slides if you have any questions about the portal.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? Seeing none.
Right on.
Chris, you're next up now. The other one. You're next on facility renewal and COVID update.
Yes, ma'am. So I had 2 more slides for you just to share with DS. Number 1, we've asked for statistics as far as, hey, well, how busy are you guys? And I will let you know, the way that I categorize it for nautical folks out there is that we're treading water, and every so often we get the rogue wave that just kind of rattles us, but somehow we pop back up to the surface again, and we're able to breathe and keep on going. So again, really appreciate Nate and again, getting him back and doing this. So if you were to look at this, the blue line is your 2020 inspections, and this is for building and engineering. And your yellow line are the 2019 inspections, okay? I mean, it's a factor of almost 1,000 more inspections that have happened in residential and commercial building in the city. And we're not even, this is as of August, okay? So crazy time. If you want to look down here, what I tried to bring out in the other lines that are all kind of grouped together here, you have 2019 annual permits, and then in 2020, you have issued permits as well as permits that are submitted. So you have one end of the pipeline of bringing things in, you got the other end of the pipeline is spitting permits out, and you can kind of see they are like hovering right over or right on top of each other. If you were to look at 2008, this was and the data there is a little sketchy because of the system that we had. This is what makes SmartGov so nice is I was able to put this together. Rebecca didn't have to put this together with 15 spreadsheets, an abacus, and a whole bunch of paper files. Everything is electronic. So this is just wonderful to do, but we are busy. The next slide really shows this, is that the yellow line is this year. 2019 was a record year for revenue, one of our best. We've had some outstanding months, like the best July in 2 decades. We had the best August in 2 decades. If you look here for our 2020, this is when basically the COVID hit and the governor shut everything down with construction. I think we did $11,000 that particular month. But you can see that we are robustly doing a lot of business as it relates to commercial, residential, and some multifamily residential projects that are going on. I don't want to steal Rebecca's thunder because she's got Mary's favorite slides coming up at the end of the show for this. So just want to let you know, we are hawking this like a big dog. I provide this information to Doug on a monthly basis because we're one of the few departments that do generate revenue. And then also on the expenditure side of the house, again, by the leadership provided by the mayor and Doug, we are, again, being good stewards of taxpayer money when it comes to our expenditures as well. So if you look at some of the files that Doug has on that, some of the things, you'll see DS is doing their fair share towards our common goal and common good here for the city. Any questions concerning that aspect of the permitting or anything like that?
Chris, I have a question in regards to the workload that the staff is currently under. We made, during the COVID, when we went through and started doing the budget cuts, we furloughed, we laid off some folks. We've seen a huge increase in your department as far as the permitting, the inspections, and everything that goes along with it. And I guess my question is, and as you stated earlier, your department does generate revenue for the city. And my question is, are we getting to a point where we need to look at bringing somebody back or in any individuals back so that we can continue to put those permits out and get those inspections done in a timely fashion?
That's a great news story, and I'll let you know, we work very closely again with the mayor on budget execution as well as budget development for next year. We have everybody back right now. There's one position that is still vacant, but I don't want to get in front of Doug or the mayor as it relates to 2021, but we have a proposal that's up there that will be provided to you. But the position that was gapped, it's a planning coordinator position, and it was a position that was developed by Rebecca due to the fact that the old permitting system that we had was very cumbersome, and we had about a dozen different spreadsheets that were used to track and maintain a understanding of kind of like where we are. The system SmartGov does that for us. So the position really for a standpoint has gotten automated, but there is something that's in the 2021 request that the mayor, Doug, and I are working on that she will be presenting, or Doug will be presenting in future weeks, that does hit that. As of right now, we've got everything that we need. We are, again, getting Nate back up to speed again because he's been out of the game for about 4.5 months. We are working with a robust training program from the 16th of this month, today, through the 1st of October. And part of it will be OJT. But the great thing about SmartGov is that our system has a training site that gets re-imaged every Friday. So he's able to go into the training site, do some work in there, as well as go to the regular site as he's gaining more confidence and understanding, working with our senior permit tech and Rebecca to ensure that, hey, he's up to speed, and then we'll sit there and slowly bring him on board. The other thing that's nice now, this is the time of the year where historically we've seen things kind of not necessarily taper off a lot, but we have seen a slowdown. Again, as weather is changing, there's less opportunity to be out there building. So we're seeing a little bit of that coming down, but there is a robust amount of work in there. And I would call it more on the administrative side of the house. So for instance, permits coming in and permits going out, by law, we have to have those done. We haven't missed anything in regards to that. But when it comes to the electronic filing system of taking and closing out all those permits, and I should have both hands up like this, there is a body of work that is taking about, I think the last time that I checked with Shauna was about 280 that need to be closed out. And that's basically getting the electronic records keeping done. Those things have to be done. So definitely Nate and our current staff will be able to go ahead and take care of that. As one part starts to ebb, we've got work to go ahead and flow that in. Long answer, but I just wanted to make sure to let you know you have properly staffed us and you have properly got us funding for our contractors. So we're using Mary Ann to supplement Rebecca as it relates to senior planner position. And if you recall, you gave us a $40,000 contract for inspectors so that as we have more inspections during this time, I've been managing that with our building official and plans examiner to make sure that we have that covered as well. So double thumbs up for that. We've been, again, focusing on that body of work, which is key to development, not necessarily getting into our 2020 work plan. Like I said, we're kind of a little bit on life support as far as that's concerned. Sorry, Mayor, for the long-winded answer.
We're used to it.
We're going to hold up a stop sign. Just kidding.
Okay.
Facilities. So on the facility side of the house, I just want to provide you a few pictures here that we are ready and able whenever the governor says open. We've got signage off to your left showing the social distancing. We've got a variety of different sanitary things that we're doing for our public as they come in. You can see how our social distancing signs are located here. We have our stanchions located in here, separating our finance department from development services. And then you can also see other areas within City Hall. For my particular department, we have the sneeze guards that are located here, our two models that are showing you what would happen if we were to be working with folks all masked up. We have all the PPE, all the cleaning devices that you could imagine. Mayor's asked for them, we got them. UV lighting is on the way, ordered and on the way, as well as HEPA filters that are HEPA 13. They're a MERV 13 capacity that really will get almost like a hospital for all of our public facilities here in the city. So sneeze guards are located everywhere, and each one of the departments, not only do they have cleaning supplies that are associated with them so that folks can take care of their own private desks, we also have PPE boxes that were provided to them as well. They have goggles, they have masks, they have a variety of other things that are associated with that. So again, everybody is healthy, cleaning areas are being taken care of, and all things are being done, again, with the guidelines utilizing what's coming from the CDC, Skagit County Health, and the state. For your spaces over at the police court campus, for your dining and dancing pleasure, when we do open up for council meetings, you will see that we have the plexiglass sneeze guards that will be between each one of your spaces so that you are safe from that perspective. We do have stanchions that are located out in the lobby area with social distancing signs, similar over here as you're going into the county court spaces. Along here, where our city staff would sit during presentations for council, we have the sneeze guards that are associated with that. And then what we have out here are, yes, stop signs, but Basically, these signage are there so that people do not sit, and we socially distance 6 feet left and right, 6 feet back and forth to ensure that, again, we are doing all the things that the CDC, Skagit County Health, and the governor's office recommend. And with that, Phillips is going to be quiet, pending your questions.
Any questions for Chris on that? Thank you, Mr. Director Phillips.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So when are we moving towards, we talked about the library last week and getting that open as best we can with the limited capacity inside in phase 3. What's the plan for City Hall?
So we're taking a look at how we're going to do that. So there's a huge packet of governor guidance, and a lot of it revolves around having monitors at the door and all these different things in place. While development services is just getting back up to full staffing with Nate starting back, and finance is not. And so it's just literally weighing, how do we comply? I don't know if Burlington is doing what I'm reading, what we're supposed to be doing. The short staffing in finance, and then really, is there any impact at this point if we just stay closed to the public a little bit longer? So those are things that we're all weighing right now. So sounds like we can have maybe a discussion about that in the nearer future as you keep figuring that out. We can, but before it was, we wouldn't open until phase 3, and that was the guidance. And then the governor came up with some very specific things that he wants to have done. And so Steve pushed ahead against all the other mayors have not gone down that path yet.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And part of why I'm asking too, I was thinking about the CARES Act funding we approved and the video conferencing systems outside of our public facilities, which make a lot of sense in the police court campus, right? Because we already have a system and it's pretty old and could use that video technology. Do we still need that kind of technology in City Hall if we're going to be opening up on a limited basis, for instance?
I think the key there is limited basis. If we decide we're only going to open a certain hours of the day or a certain amount of people allowed in, I think it's very useful. Later on, after we get to it, we have a solution for a kiosk to be put outside, similar to an ATM. And so that might be a big solution too. So I still think that the need is there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. The last one I have is I'm going to get Rebecca's slides up here.
Okay.
Sharing with her. And Rebecca, you're up.
All right. Thank you. So I have a handful of slides tonight that are project updates. They, of course, don't comprise everything that we're doing, but I tried to pick projects that I thought would be of interest to the council. So I wanted to start with 3 short plats that we're finalizing. I thought these could be of interest to the council because, of course, you don't approve short plats. Those are administratively approved. So I know you're very aware of the standard plats or the long plats because they come to you, but you may not be aware that these are in process right now. So this first one is the East Village plat, and I incorrectly labeled what's going on with this one. There's actually 7 single-family residential lots and 2 NGPAs, which are native growth protection areas, because there is a significant wetland and part of the headwater of Maddox Creek bisects roughly the middle part of that site. And you can see where the tree line is there pretty clearly. You can see where that stream flows through that site. There is construction of a new private road, a stormwater pond, and of course other infrastructure. And these new lots are all located on the northern portion of this site, which means that the area south of the stream could be developed someday as well. Next up, I've got the what we're calling the B&T short plat. This is a plat that is 5 commercial industrial lots and 2 tracks. There is also a wetland and a portion of a stream that flows through this site as well. The site is located south of Anderson Road, east of Cedardale. And actually was briefly mentioned last council meeting was one of the permit extensions. This was the plat of concern that we're working on, and just processing that one right now. And we will absolutely meet the deadlines on that one. No concerns. So the next short plat was a little infill short plat we're working on. We're calling it the Walter Street short plat. It will be constructing 7 single family lots, and there is 1 existing house on this road, or within this plat, excuse me. You can see that it's located north of Blackburn Road and west of the fairgrounds. So nice little infill lot, or little infill plat that'll be finished up here in the near future. The next set of slides are 3 updates for multifamily residential that I thought would be of interest. The first one is the permanent supported housing, of course, at 1925 East College. That, of course, as you're aware, is a 70-unit permanent supported housing facility. It'll be 4 stories in height and will include 50 studio units and 21 bedroom units. Currently, I am processing their SEPA site plan and design review. They've already completed their traffic concurrency and a parking study. And of course, they had a very significant EIS that was also completed about a year ago on this site. So we are really literally in the thick of it with processing this with Catholic Community Services. So it'll be a good project, and is we're working through that one right now. The next one is the Housing Authority's farm worker housing at 4100 East College Way. This will be 51 multifamily units that will be accommodated within 6 structures. This project, the applicant attempted to make a submittal to us in August. It was technically incomplete. So in those cases, by law, we provide them with notice that it is incomplete and a list of all of the items that they need to submit to us so that it is complete and actually gives us just the information that we need to ensure code compliance. The permits that they had submitted were the SEPA site plan design review. We were able to take their traffic concurrency application, but that is the only permit that we're currently processing for this project right now. But expect them to resubmit fairly soon and get this one hopefully going in the coming weeks. The next multifamily residential project, which is actually, I think, if all of you haven't seen this, phase 1 of this project, I think it's really worth going down. It's north of Hazel, east of South 6th Street, and we've actually got a city park right on the corner. But there was a 6-unit townhomes that were constructed, I want to say a year ago, but that probably means it was 2 years ago now. But really, it was really worth seeing because it really is an infill project that is done really well. And being townhomes, they condominiumize those for the existing units. And so the units were sold off separately. So great infill tool being utilized there. And the 5 new attached townhomes are currently under construction, which are immediately to the east of the 6 homes that are already there. So a great project that's currently under construction. And then I just had a list of others for you because I could could have spent days days on this, but that I didn't have. But I thought these might interest you guys. We have an indoor baseball facility, which is about a 15,500 square foot building that's proposed at 200 Valley Mall Way. So if you're familiar with the where the old Goodwill was and the new Goodwill, it's that vacant lot that's located right between them. It's kind of the grassy field in the middle of the parking lot there was actually just a vacant lot. And actually that is one that you will be seeing, I think the second week in October, because I will need a councilmatic action on some transportation concurrency issues with that one. But I think it'll be a nice development on a vacant piece of property in that location. Commercial cold storage. We just finished up doing a SEPA and a shoreline permit for them for a new product racking system, which may not sound like it's really all that big a deal. When I first did the pre-app with them, I was thinking, oh, just some new racks to put stuff on in their building until I saw the plans and the price tag that's coming along with that racking system. They've estimated it's a little over a $2 million investment for them to do this. We're currently waiting on their building permits to be submitted, but we did complete the planning portion of their permitting within the last few months. We've got a new daycare facility that's proposed at Skagit Valley College. It'll actually be on the west side of LaVenture, just north of Fire Station 2. So I've been working with a college and their architects there. They need to amend their master plan and of course do SEPA, site plan, handful of their other entitlement permits to get that done. But we've been actively working with them on that. Then we've got two projects that both involve Skagit County and Skagit Valley College. So one, Skagit County is proposing new soccer fields immediately to the east of the college, right off of College Way. And then the college, or not, excuse me, not the college, the county is also proposing switching some of their existing baseball fields to softball fields up in the Dreamfield location. As you might be aware, that area is surrounded by extensive series of wetlands. So there was quite a bit of permitting we had to look at to authorize actually both of those projects. So they are both in process. And then we've got the Freeway Drive outfall, which is actually one of our city projects that ended up being more complicated, I'm sure, than anyone would think it would be, looking at it on paper. But it is one that required the SEPA process. And then we actually have to go and get a conditional use permit, a shoreline conditional use permit, because it's a utility and where it's located in our shoreline. So that will be before the hearing examiner next month, and then hopefully that will start. And then of course we've got our CIP, which I just have a tiny little piece of that, the procedural pieces of that, but still it's time consuming, but that's been wrapped up and you guys will see that next month, I believe. So my last slide was, actually I should stop there in case anyone has questions with updates.
Does anybody have any questions for Rebecca on those?
I have one quick question. Rebecca, I didn't understand, where are the softball fields going?
They are repurposing one of their existing baseball fields up in where they call the Dream Fields, up at the it would be northeast of Skagit Valley College campus, so right off of Martin Road.
Right. So it's not the Dream Field though, is it? The baseball field?
It is one of the baseball fields that they're
but
they're
it's
repurposing.
Not, okay. I figured it out. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions for Rebecca? Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
All right. So last but not least, I just wanted to mention that I will have two sets of interim codes back before you next week on the 23rd. Just wanted to mention them. They were both two different sets of interim regulations that because of the COVID-19 issues, they've both expired, and in order to have them in place, we need to, I need to be back before you to ask you to again declare an emergency, adopt interim regulations, and we'll start that process over again. So that is for the, one is for the safe parking and the other is for the winter shelters. So you guys will see those next week. And there will be nothing new in the winter shelters at all. That one was pretty straightforward. The safe parking ordinance, I have some language with regard to allowing alternative ways for public outreach because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, before we had public meetings and those types of things that were required that, of course, are not possible right now. So we're just actively trying to find ways to reach out to the surrounding neighborhoods, but still recognizing that it's an important tool to have available to allow the safe parking. So I'm hopeful that council will pass those next week.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Rebecca on that? Okay, I heard did somebody want to have a question? Richard, did you?
A quick one, I think. I'm wondering if anyone has utilized the bonus density affordable housing program yet. I assume Housing Authority, but anybody biting on that?
Actually, the Housing Authority has not. They didn't need to at all. Yeah. So they interestingly, they're actually walking away from potential density on that site, which I thought was interesting. You would have thought, and I just, I would have assumed that they would have tried to maximize the density.
Yeah. 51 is a pretty big number. So just so folks know, this is the program that the council passed last year to provide bonus density for folks who set aside affordable housing in private developments. But Rebecca, it doesn't sound like there's anybody yet who's gone down that road.
I've had quite a bit of interest, and I've had goodness, Chris might need to help me here. At least 3 pre-apps where I've walked applicants through the base density and what's possible with that, and we've definitely had interest in that. But going back to the Housing Authority, they could, just so everyone's on the same page here, they could be adding additional stories. They could be reconfiguring those buildings absolutely in different ways to get more density on that site. It's been a little perplexing to me, but their project, not ours.
Thank you.
Anybody else for Rebecca? Okay, seeing none. Miscellaneous good of the order, anybody?
I have Peter and I have a quick discussion on the use of the additional CARES funding that we talked just briefly about, we found out about last week. So I was going to share, I know it's late, everyone. Okay, so, sorry. Okay, so last week we mentioned that we had received word. We still haven't received any information from the Commerce or the contract or anything like that, but the press release said that we would receive about $536,000 additional CARES funding, so CARES funding 2.0. So just spoke with the staff and talked a little bit about what other needs we had for the city. And so we've got some proposals. Clearly it's council's decision, but we thought we'd bring this before you. we would use some of that allocation to get reimbursed for additional staffing. So IT staff, TV10 actually have been working quite a bit on programming, especially with the library, and then administrative staffing through the allowable reimbursement time. The outdoor payment kiosk, this is something that Doug found out about from other cities where they had purchased a kiosk like a little ATM. So it would be outside. It's made to be outside as far as maybe not vandalism proof, but to be outside. It would be able to accept payments for our city utility bills, including cash. We researched a little bit of it. We just wanted to see what we all thought about that. It would definitely improve customer service for those that don't come to City Hall during actually regular business hours if there wasn't a pandemic. So people could come by after hours, they could pay their bills. We believe it could also do other functions, like we do have some parking permits here in our downtown area. We think we could use it for a few other different functions as well for service to folks. Remodeling costs, so we looked at some of those costs. We think it'll be more than 85,000. However, we don't want to overcommit. We wanted to, recommend as much possible to council for small business grants and stuff like that. So our idea was that we could try and move forward for about 236,000 and leave 300,000 for small business or other uses. And so with that, Peter's been working on what those small business grants could look like. And also we had found out about some additional CDBG funding on, it was a Monday or anyway. So I'm gonna turn it over to Peter to walk you through some of this.
Awesome, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I think because there's been so much talk about funding coming into the community that the Mayor just wanted to kind of simplify this, and she thought, simplify, simple. Peter, maybe you could explain this. You're a simple guy. So this is both coming from the CARES Act. One is the CARES funding that you guys have been talking about, the council's been looking at. The other is CDBG. And we've had a round of CDBG early. We have a second round that we just found out about on Friday that we've been talking about, but weren't sure about the amount. So that's the 262 on the right side there. So what the mayor was just talking about, that remaining 300,000, if council wanted to do something like small business grants, we've reached out to EDASC. I've also talked with Skagit County Public Health about both of these sources of funding and sort of where the city could fit in with the bigger picture, the broader conversation of what other cities are doing, what the county's doing, and how we can partner to have the most impact with these. So looking at for small business grants, really the criteria is not wide open, but it's a little bit looser criteria than what we had for CDBG, where we just had micro enterprise support, where it was just 5 employees or fewer. And really that narrowed the field a lot to the point where we were able to award everyone who applied. So we feel like we've sort of dealt with and taken care of those businesses well. There are some others who have maybe slipped through the cracks. And so we're looking at maybe fewer than 25 FTEs, so smaller sized businesses, obviously within city limits, impacted by COVID restrictions, and locally managed, owned. We can work with all of that criteria, and council can narrow that. But what I have right there is sort of a reflection of what EDASC expressed are some of the needs maybe right now. They also noted that nonprofit grants are a good way to go with some of that CARES funding, and maybe those nonprofits that would not qualify for CDBG funding. So you could do some equipment and grants to food banks, hospice. There's a number of different nonprofits that sort of weren't thought of in that first round of funding, but actually are really impacted by COVID, whether it's staffing or their ability to operate or the expanded need for service to deliver food and other supplies to people in their homes. So with that, I think on the CDBG side, the community action, I talked with community action about what the need is for rental assistance. And right now, community action is feeling like they are sort of maxed out with what they can do. And the reason for that is in part their staffing size, their capacity, but really all of these funds that have come into the community recently and that they've been inundated with for very good reasons and with a lot of need for them. They have strings attached to them. So they have timing. They have to be spent by November or 3 months from when they're awarded. CDBG CV funds, which is the 262, they have 6 months to spend that. And so that was a little bit of a change for community action, and they saw the opportunity for some eviction prevention, sort of rental assistance with that type of money that they could sort of tag on after the beginning of the year when those other funds have dried up or are no longer available. Quick snapshot. Any questions about those funding sources?
We're just looking
Peter,
for council thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
think it's a pretty good overview. I like the idea of maybe being able to help out a couple of those nonprofits that have been impacted, especially the food banks that are probably going to have a higher demand as we get into the winter seasons. So it'd be nice to be able to provide some funding for those so they can provide nourishment for less fortunate in our community. I think that the fewer than 25 employees, city-owned businesses or city-operated businesses, not franchise, or I shouldn't say not franchises, but not box stores per se, should be eligible. So I think it's a pretty good start for a plan.
Councilmember Holst, we remembered your request when Helping Hands Food Bank was here, and we did reach out to them to let them know about this new funding opportunity.
Any other thing that come to mind as far as criteria? We thought if we kept it as simple as possible, that would be the widest possible net we could cast for it. So
I like the widest possible net concept. I think that's a really great thing. And it'll help a lot more people, I think, a lot more businesses in our community.
Peter, could you share really quick what the county is going to use some of their funding for, because they received a significant amount? You're on mute, though.
Yes. Right now, it's looking like, yeah, I don't know if this is a final plan or a preliminary plan.
Oh, okay.
But they're going to be looking at some money for to schools, some mortgage assistance, some hotel vouchers, child care support, things like small grants to smaller nonprofits, and some food bank support as well. So there's pretty large amounts going in there. So we're taking all this into consideration when we're looking at what to do with what we have too. I'm going to meet with the county, with Kayla, and some local nonprofits tomorrow, Skagit Community Foundation, EDASC, and talk about this and how it could impact the nonprofit world. And then also we're going to meet with all of the cities. City administrators are going to together and talk about how to piece this together. So we'll be a part of the greater community and what's going on for relief efforts.
Well, thanks, Mayor and Peter. This is just, I think, exactly what we asked for. It's really well thought out, and I can't wait to see maybe how it gets refined when you sit down and coordinate with everybody. The only one I'm, still kind of wondering about a little bit is the outdoor kiosk, and if that's gonna, help an awful lot during the COVID situation, but it kind of depends on what the other opportunities are. So thank you again. Appreciate you putting all this work into it.
Anybody else? Sorry.
I have just one more slide.
Okay.
I realized after all the discussions around development services that I hadn't talked to council about how we were and what we had done on staffing since so I apologize for not doing this sooner as it kind of happened. So on the left here is kind of from a memo of where we were at when we kind of had the plan in place and we started furloughs and layoffs and things like that. So on the right side here is really the return from furlough, what we've been able to do, and the different dates that we've brought folks back. We also have down on the layoff piece is that additional person coming back from layoff, which was Nate, and that's the permit tech and development services. The 3 part-time staff members are just weekend folks, so they're just in minimally, maybe 1 day a week in parks, and those are lockups and stuff like that. Bill Olson is our yard waste, one of our yard waste attendants. So we've kind of here and there trickled people back as we've needed it. It's all worked into the overall financial picture that we presented to you. We've all made it work with that. So haven't necessarily gotten back anywhere. People are still out from our parks and recreation side, so there's still folks that are out. But that was just a snapshot of, we've been bringing folks back as different things have arisen. One of the things that was surprised me was parking enforcement. So we thought, well, Carrie, there's a lot of the downtown, but what we started running into with solid waste was having a huge problem in neighborhoods where people started parking and, getting in the way of garbage collection and stuff like that. So we brought her back just on a 20-hour a week to really help get that moving through, which has helped a great deal. So that's it on the staffing, and that's all I have. So.
Great. Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing nothing, we will adjourn at, what time is it? Let's see, 8:20. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.